Sicilian, and I know a lot of you watch The Sopranos. That's not true. Not all Sicilians are in the mob. Some are in the witness protection program. Sopranos isn't real because they don't hit their kids nearly enough, all right? My God. Now, I'm going to tell you the truth. My grandfather, he used to be in the mob. He doesn't understand show business at all. I film a television show. I'm so proud of myself. Out of respect, first call, I'm like, Pop, I shot a pilot. He goes, oh, my God, don't say that over the phone. I was still trying to go, no, Pop, a TV pilot. He goes, I don't care what airline he works for. You call me back from a payphone. I ain't going down because you get sloppy.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, Trump Tuesday, March the 31st, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and President Trump. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, Stuart Varney.
A big day, Maria. Good morning to you. Good morning, everyone. The Wall Street Journal is moving the market. Looks like a real shift in war strategy. Here's the headline. Trump tells aides he's willing to end the war without reopening Hormuz. According to highly placed sources, the administration would deal with Iran's missiles and its enriched uranium, then would deal with opening the strait. And on Truth Social this morning, the president said, if the Europeans can't get the jet fuel they need, go to the strait and get it. An early end to the fighting would help the president politically, but the continuing closure of the strait means politically unpopular $4 gas and $100 oil. Stock investors want an early end to the war, and they are pushing stocks sharply higher this Tuesday morning. The Dow up maybe 480, 500 points, 67 points higher for the S&P. That's better than 1%. Same at the Nasdaq, better than 1%, of about 240 points. Now, if the Strait stays closed, oil goes up. That is what is happening. Oil right now, $102.93 a barrel. All right, now look at gas. $4.01 a gallon for regular. First time we've seen that in 4 years. The White House says when Operation Epic Fury is complete, gas prices will plummet. As for California, well, they've reached $5.88 a gallon, and that's for regular. Diesel up another 4 cents overnight. Highly inflationary. $5.45 is the average price for diesel, and that is up $1.70 in just 1 month. Elsewhere, Bitcoin coming in at 66,000. The 10-year Treasury yield around 4.30. To be precise, it's 4.31. The 2-year coming in around 3.81, 3.80 right now. Gold, 4,500 and change. No, sorry, gone up, 4,600 and change. On the show today, the airports. Some TSA agents have started to receive their paychecks. The lines are improving, but there's still no funding deal for Homeland Security. The great divide on taxes. Blue states, Washington, Massachusetts, Colorado, California, New York City, all considering new taxes on the rich. Red states, Mississippi, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Missouri, all considering eliminating or sharply reducing taxes. This is going to affect where people live and work. Yes, it is Tuesday, March 31st. Big day for you.
And that was Varney and Company. Nonprofit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the bad Democrat, psychologically speaking, is someone who's constructed a kind of false self, a mask to shield themselves from an unbearable sense of inadequacy. But that mask is hungry. It needs validation. It needs control. It needs to consume the attention and emotional energy of others to keep itself intact. And who better to provide that supply than the conservative, who's wired to give, to understand, to soothe? But here's what the bad Democrat doesn't anticipate. Sometimes that conservative evolves. They get smart. They stop confusing kindness with self-sacrifice. They start to see, and when that happens, when a conservative gets smart, they transform into something formidable, the true conservative. This isn't about revenge. It's not about turning cold or cruel. It's about power. The kind that comes from clarity, self-respect, and a refusal to play a rigged game. So there are 5 powerful ways that the true conservative dismantles a bad Democrat's control. Not through aggression, but through wisdom, through boundaries, through truth. Because in the end, the greatest threat to a bad Democrat isn't rage. It's someone who sees them clearly and walks away anyway. You know, it's a remarkable thing how people can find themselves wrapped up in relationships that from the outside appear deeply dysfunctional, even damaging, and yet from within, they're remarkably difficult to escape. It's not always because the person on the receiving end is weak or foolish or naive, though they may feel that way after the fact. No, it's often because they're deeply empathic. They feel intensely. They're attuned to other people's emotions in a way that can become, paradoxically, both their gift and their curse. They want to help. They want to heal. They want to believe the best about someone, even when all the signs suggest otherwise. And here's where the bad Democrat comes in. When I talk about a bad Democrat, I'm not merely talking about someone who takes a lot of selfies or enjoys being the center of attention. That's shallow. That's not the psychological reality of what's happening. The bad Democrat, at his core, is the constructor of a false identity. A bad Democrat doesn't feel secure in themselves. In fact, they feel quite the opposite. But rather than confront that, they build a persona, sort of a psychology that they wear. It's not really who they are. It's who they need others to believe they are in order to function. It's fragile, but it can be very convincing. charismatic even. And here's where the danger lies, because the conservative, especially the ersatz conservative, tends to believe that mask. They see the confidence, they hear the charm, they feel the intensity. And because they want to see the good in others, they overlook the warning signs, the inconsistencies, the manipulations. They rationalize the hurt. They excuse the outbursts. They internalize the blame. Not because they're weak, but because they're wired to empathize. They think, well, maybe they're just wounded. Maybe they just need more attention. And so they give and they give. But attention doesn't heal someone who refuses to face the truth. And that's something the true conservative begins to understand. There's a moment, often after a long period of confusion and emotional exhaustion, where they begin to recognize the pattern. They see that the relationship is cyclical. It creates a kind of psychological whiplash, and the conservative begins to feel like they're going crazy. They doubt their perception. They feel guilty for even questioning the bad Democrat. That's the effect of gaslighting and manipulation tactics the bad Democrat often uses to distort reality and maintain control. That didn't happen. You're imagining things. You're being dramatic. And slowly, the conservative begins to question their own memory, their own instincts. That's the erosion of the self. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Dr. Berg.
One of the biggest problems in healthcare is the lack of evaluation. So evaluation is finding the root cause of something. It's investigating to find the true thing that caused something. So I'm going to take in this video just one symptom and pull the string and show you what I do, because every time you treat a symptom, you camouflage the symptom and you perpetuate the problem. All right, let's just take fatigue, for example. We're going to take that as a symptom or a clue and go deeper. Now, the first thing I do is I find out when did it start and then what happened just before you start getting tired to get a clue to find out what's causing it. So there's two main situations with with fatigue. Number one is you're not sleeping and you're tired, or you are sleeping but you're still tired. So I guess one of the biggest causes of fatigue is you're not sleeping. But that's a symptom, again, of something else. So we don't want to treat it. We don't want to treat this with 5-hour energy drink or treat this with a sleeping pill. We want to find out what's really behind it. So I'm going to show you some of the potential causes of not sleeping. Number one, it could be stress. It could be your adrenals are burnt out and you're stuck in stress because you've been pushing. It could be that you stopped smoking 20 years ago and you were so dependent on the nicotine that the stopping of smoking created stress in the heart, because nicotine artificially opened up the coronary artery to the heart, and then you actually relaxed and you actually can breathe better. So when you smoke for many years and you stop, you could actually have a problem with your heart being tired because it's never adapted. So I have a lot of people that when they stopped smoking, after that they were just stuck in stress and they were tired and they couldn't sleep because of that one point. Okay, so it could be a physical reason. Maybe you have pain in your back. Maybe you have a pain in your neck and you can't get comfortable. What if it's a hot flash? That could be it too. Or maybe it's your sinuses. That's called sleep apnea, right? And they label it and then they treat it. But what causes the sinus? Let's go a little deeper with sinus. What causes sinus? Well, what causes the thickened mucous membranes could be a lack of vitamin A, right? We could have lack of vitamin A. But it could be you don't have enough bile from your gallbladder to digest the vitamin A, and that's why you're not absorbing it from the food that you're eating. And by the way, kale shake is high in vitamin A, and that's why it helps the sinuses. Or it could be the adrenals are so stressed that that high level of cortisol can cause atrophy of certain nerves in the back of the neck that go to the mucous membranes and swell up the sinuses. So a lot of people with adrenal problems end up with sinus problems because the treatment for sinuses are a lot of times steroids, because steroids are adrenal hormones. So that's another little causation. It could be allergies. But again, what causes allergies? A weak adrenal. So we're just trying to pull the string. It could be a nutritional factor. It could be low could be low potassium, all right? Because maybe your diet's not high enough in potassium because you're not eating enough vegetables. Or it could be too much sugar that's pulling out the potassium. So we got to look at both angles. Could be lack of calcium because maybe you're eating too much junk food and you're not able to pull it because junk foods depletes calcium and B vitamins. So a lot of breads, pasta, cereal, crackers, biscuits, and waffles and pancakes can deplete the B vitamins that are supposed to be retained in the body and ending up with a low vitamin B. And then what happens is that you have nightmares and you can't sleep. So B vitamins help you sleep. It could be junk food. It could be alcohol. These are just factors that I'm always looking at. It could be environmental, where your bed is just not flat enough and it kind of sags and you need a new bed. Or it could be noise because your husband snores. Or what about your dog? Do you sleep with your dog? Some patients sleep with their dog. And I'm like, that's not going to work because the dog's fidgeting all night long. Or maybe you work third shift, okay? Another causation. Or maybe you're only getting 4 hours of sleep. So these are things that we have to pull a string and find out what's behind it. Okay, but let's say, for example, you are sleeping and you're still tired. That could be a thyroid problem. Why? We got to find out why. It could be high estrogen levels coming from a heavy period of fibroid. Maybe you're eating too much soy in your diet. Or you just got pregnant and you spiked the estrogen and then the thyroid became a problem and then you couldn't sleep. So these are things that you want to dig deeper. It could also be a liver. Did you realize that your thyroid is dependent on the liver and it converts the thyroid hormones through the gallbladder? So without a good liver or a good gallbladder, if you had it removed, you can't convert those thyroid hormones, thereby creating a fatigue in your body. So these are things that are deeper than the superficial. Or it could be a virus that comes out of remission. So anytime the immune system goes down because of stress, a loss of a loved one, boom, immune system goes down and you get sick. Old viruses can come out of remission and it can make you tired. I have people that are in chronic, like mono, which is Epstein-Barr virus, and they're always tired because of the low adrenal, because they're in a stressful environment. I've also had people tired because they had an old head injury, and ever since that injury, they've been tired in their head. Okay, it could be also our light sleeper. Because the adrenals are so stressed out, your body can't get into the lower levels and can't relax, all right? These are all deeper levels. So, number one, never accept a symptom as being a problem, okay? Differentiate symptoms from problems, cause and effect, and always ask why, and that way you can really get to the bottom of it. I hope this helped. I'll see you in the next video.
And that was Dr. Berg. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, motivation.
All of us have seen our destiny at some point in time. And we decided not to listen. We decided to ignore it and say, no, that's not for me. Why? Because somewhere along the line, life came in and knocked us down, told us we couldn't do it. And we stopped dreaming. And we settled. We settled for average. We settled for, oh well. The impulse to dream can be slowly beaten out of through the experience of life.
The reality of life, whatever that truth is, it's not as powerful as the perception on how you see it. No matter what happens, it's the perception on how you see it. I'm talking to you about elevated thinking. I'm talking about getting above the storm, you eagle. Stop talking to me about the storm and the recession and what's going on in the economy. That's for blue jays and robins and sparrows. Eagles fly above the storm. They don't read the weather report. They don't even care. Get above it. There is a way to get above the storm in your life. You got a reason inside of yourself. I'm better than this. I'm stronger than this. I will survive this. This is not going to be it for my life. I deserve more than this. See, that will start making you do some stuff. And when I start changing that kind of mindset of beating myself up because of my mistakes and start looking at the possibility of my doing better, of my making the adjustment that would enable me to do what I want to do successfully, things begin to change. Nobody can do you like you do you. You are in a class all by yourself. Nobody breathe in what I just said, you wouldn't be so insecure. You wouldn't be so intimidated. You wouldn't be so vulnerable. There will never be another you. You are in a class all by yourself. You got a voice like nobody. You got a fingerprint like nobody. You got thoughts like nobody. You are in a class all by yourself. You are one of a kind. You can if you believe you can. It is how you think about yourself, because if you think wrong, you go wrong. If you think down, you go down. If you think you can't get up, you can't get up. If you think you can't be free, you can't be free. If you think you can't learn anymore, you'll never be able to learn. Your thoughts are either dragging you down or taking you up. You gotta tell yourself, I want my head back. I'm tired of being drunk with grief and pain and frustration. I'm tired of going around in circles. I've wasted life. And from now on, I've got to be smarter than I've ever been in my life. You have to live the law of expectation. You have to expect your life to be better than it was, and it will be. There is no reason why it won't be. I want you to throw off discouragement, doubt, depression, bitterness, envy, and I want you to start living with a full focus on where you want to go in life. Because where you focus is where you'll go. Do not allow yourself to go into another year and waste another year with that old mentality while somebody right now is in the hospital begging for the opportunity that you have right now. You better step into this moment, because you can change everything for you starting right now. You can have whatever you want to have. You can be whatever you want to be. You can go wherever you want to go, and you can do whatever you're bold enough, whatever you're big enough, whatever you're strong enough to dream. And what you need to do it is already inside of you.
And that was motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, meditation.
This morning is a fresh beginning. A quiet reminder that you are already enough, just as you are. Before the world asks anything of you, take this moment for yourself. A moment to reconnect, to breathe, to remember your strength. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently exhale. Today, begin with this simple truth. You are strong and capable of anything. Bring your awareness into your body. Feel yourself supported, steady, present. Relax your shoulders. Soften your face. Take another deep breath in. And as you exhale, allow your body to settle. There is nothing to rush. You are exactly where you need to be. Now gently focus on your breath. Notice the inhale and the exhale. Let your breath become smooth and easy. With each inhale, invite in fresh energy. With each exhale, let go of any tension. Breathing in calm. Breathing out ease. Within you lives a quiet, steady strength. It has guided you through so much. And it is here with you now. Take a moment to connect with it. You don't need to force strength. Notice it quietly living within you, steady, patient, and already enough. Repeat gently. I feel a deep, steady strength within me. Let this feel natural, grounded, true. Imagine a warm, golden light glowing softly in your chest. With each inhale, it brightens. With each exhale, it expands. Feel this light moving through your entire body. This is your inner power. Your resilience. Your calm confidence. If any thoughts arise, simply notice them. No need to hold on. No need to push away. Let them pass gently, like clouds in the sky. Return to your breath. Return to your center. And remind yourself, I am steady like the earth beneath shifting skies. And capable like the quiet river that always finds its way. Now softly repeat within. There is a deeper strength in me than I sometimes remember. Even in uncertainty, I remain steady and capable. I have everything I need within me. Let these words settle deeply, like seeds being planted. You don't need to have everything figured out. Life unfolds step by step. And you are fully equipped for the journey. Trust your path. Trust your timing. Trust yourself. There is a natural flow guiding you forward. Now bring your awareness to the day ahead. Gently imagine yourself moving through your day with ease. With clarity, with quiet confidence. See yourself responding with strength. Making decisions with trust. This energy is already yours. Take one final deep breath in. And slowly exhale. Feel a sense of calm strength within you. And repeat one last time. I am strong. I am capable of anything. When you're ready, gently open your eyes. Carry this feeling with you, like a quiet light that stays with you throughout the day.
And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Mossad.
What you are about to see was classified for decades. Both superpowers agreed to bury it. Historians ignored it. Textbooks erased it. Because on July 30th, 1970, 8 Israeli pilots did something that was never supposed to happen. They humiliated the Soviet Union in 3 minutes and lived to tell no one about it. Between the legendary Six-Day War of 1967 and the traumatic Yom Kippur War of 1973 lies a conflict that history has largely forgotten. A grinding struggle that claimed thousands of lives and brought the world closer to nuclear confrontation than most people realize. The historians who bother to study it call it the War of Attrition, a name that captures exactly what it was. A slow bleeding contest between Egypt and Israel along the banks of the Suez Canal, fought not for territory, but for pride, for psychological momentum, for the future of the Middle East. It was a war without dramatic tank charges or sweeping maneuvers, without the kind of decisive battles that make headlines and fill history books. Instead, it was a war of artillery shells and sniper bullets, of midnight raids and dawn ambushes, of young men dying one by one in the sand while politicians in distant capitals argued about borders and sovereignty. The war began in the spring of 1968, less than a year after Israel's stunning victory in the Six-Day War had humiliated the armed forces of 3 Arab nations in under a week. Egypt had lost the entire Sinai Peninsula, watching helplessly as Israeli tanks rolled across desert that had been Egyptian territory since the pharaohs. The Suez Canal now marked the ceasefire line between 2 armies staring at each other across 100 meters of water. Fingers on triggers, waiting for the next explosion. For Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, this situation was intolerable in ways that went beyond military strategy or national interest. The loss of Sinai was not merely defeat, but personal humiliation, a stain on his legacy as the leader of Arab nationalism, proof that all his speeches about unity and resistance meant nothing when confronted with Israeli firepower. He could not accept a peace that left Israeli soldiers on the eastern bank. He could not launch another full-scale war because his army was shattered and his air force destroyed. But he could do something else, something requiring patience rather than brilliance, endurance rather than courage. He could bleed the Israelis slowly, day by day, shell by shell, casualty by casualty, until the cost of holding Sinai became unbearable, until Israeli mothers began demanding their sons come home, until occupation became unsustainable through sheer accumulated pain. The Egyptian strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Artillery batteries along the western bank began firing into Israeli positions, sometimes sporadically, sometimes in concentrated barrages, lasting hours. Commando teams crossed the canal at night to plant mines, ambush patrols, and disappear before reinforcements arrived. Snipers picked off soldiers one by one, turning every movement in the open into a potentially fatal gamble. The Israelis, confident after their overwhelming victory, initially dismissed these attacks as desperate spasms of a defeated enemy. They were wrong. By the end of 1969, the Israeli military command had reached a conclusion that would have seemed unthinkable 2 years earlier. They were losing the war of attrition, not through battlefield defeats, but through the slow erosion of national will that Nasser had precisely calculated. Something had to change. The ground war along the canal was a trap, a killing field that favored Egyptian artillery and negated Israeli advantages in mobility and tactical flexibility. If Israel wanted to break the deadlock, it would have to take the war somewhere the Egyptians could not match them. It would have to take the war into the sky. The Israeli Air Force in 1969 was, by almost any measure, the most effective tactical air arm in the world. A small but devastatingly capable force that had proven itself against enemies outnumbering it 10-1. The foundation of that supremacy had been laid in the opening hours of the Six-Day War, when Israeli pilots destroyed nearly the entire Egyptian Air Force on the ground in less than 3 hours, a masterpiece of planning and execution that military academies would study for decades. By late 1969, the Israeli High Command concluded it was time to use their dominance not merely to support ground operations, but to win the war outright. The concept was straightforward in theory, though enormously complex in execution. If Egyptian artillery was bleeding Israel dry, Israeli aircraft would destroy that artillery. If air defenses protected the artillery, Israeli aircraft would destroy the defenses first. And if the Egyptian government refused a ceasefire, Israeli aircraft would strike deep inside Egypt itself, hitting military installations, industrial facilities, and infrastructure targets that would demonstrate to Nasser that no part of his country was safe from Israeli reach. The campaign was codenamed Priha, Hebrew for blossom, an oddly poetic name for an operation designed to rain destruction on Egyptian cities. It began in January 1970, and for the first several weeks, it exceeded every expectation. Israeli Phantom and Skyhawk aircraft penetrated deep into Egyptian airspace, striking targets the Egyptians believed beyond reach. Radar installations along the Nile Delta were destroyed in precision strikes that left the Egyptian air defense network blind and fragmented. Military bases outside Cairo were hit repeatedly, their hangars reduced to burning wreckage, their runways cratered by bombs. In one particularly audacious raid, Israeli aircraft attacked an Egyptian military headquarters in a Cairo suburb, killing dozens of officers and demonstrating that even the capital was vulnerable. The psychological effect on Egyptian leadership was profound and precisely what Israel intended. Nasser, who had spent 2 years bleeding Israel through attrition, suddenly found himself watching helplessly as Israeli aircraft appeared over his cities whenever they pleased, struck whatever targets they chose, and disappeared before air defenses could respond. The Egyptian Air Force, rebuilt with Soviet assistance after '67, proved unable to challenge Israeli dominance. Egyptian MiG-21 interceptors that rose to meet Israeli raiders were shot down with depressing regularity, their pilots either killed or ejecting over the desert to face the humiliation of capture. By February 1970, Nasser was desperate enough to take a step that would transform the conflict entirely, a step he had resisted for years because he understood its implications. He flew to Moscow to beg for help. What he asked for was unprecedented in Cold War history. He wanted the Soviet Union to commit its own military forces to Egypt's defense. Not weapons and advisors, but Soviet pilots flying Soviet aircraft against Israeli attackers, Soviet missile crews manning Soviet air defense batteries, a Soviet military operation in everything but name. The request was extraordinary, a plea that acknowledged Egyptian military impotence while simultaneously threatening to transform a regional conflict into a superpower confrontation. The request landed on Premier Leonid Brezhnev's desk, and for several days, the leadership of the communist world debated what to do. The risks were obvious and terrifying. Direct Soviet involvement could trigger confrontation with the United States, could escalate into the nuclear war both powers had spent 25 years avoiding. But the alternative was equally unacceptable. If Egypt fell, if Nasser's regime collapsed under Israeli pressure, the Soviet Union would lose its most important Arab ally, watching decades of investment evaporate overnight, suffering humiliation that would reverberate from Berlin to Beijing. In early March 1970, Brezhnev made his decision. Soviet forces would deploy to Egypt. Soviet pilots would fly combat missions. The operation would be conducted in absolute secrecy, with Soviet personnel wearing Egyptian uniforms to maintain the fiction of non-involvement. But everyone who mattered would know the truth. The code name was Operation Kavkaz, named for the Caucasus Mountains. The Cold War was about to get very hot. They arrived in Egypt in darkness, transported on Soviet military aircraft flying without navigation lights, landing at airfields cleared of Egyptian personnel. They wore no insignia, carried no identification, and were forbidden from speaking Russian where anyone might overhear. To the few Egyptians who glimpsed them, they were ghosts, pale-skinned men who moved in groups, kept to themselves, and communicated in a language no one could understand. The first Soviet combat forces were air defense troops, specialists operating the SA-3 Goa missile system, a weapon specifically designed to counter low-flying aircraft that could evade the older SA-2 systems. The SA-3 was faster, more maneuverable, and more accurate than anything the Israelis had encountered, and the Soviet crews were not poorly trained Egyptian conscripts who had failed so consistently in previous engagements. They were professionals who had spent years preparing for exactly this kind of combat, motivated by ideology, by the conviction they were defending socialism against imperialist aggression, that the Israeli Air Force was a tool of American hegemony that had to be stopped. Within weeks of the first deployments, Israeli pilots noticed changes they could not explain. Missile launches came from unexpected locations, tracked aircraft with unprecedented accuracy, forced evasion maneuvers that burned precious fuel. The electronic signatures were different, suggesting new systems or new procedures or both. Pilots who had grown accustomed to Egyptian incompetence suddenly found themselves fighting for their lives against an enemy who seemed to know exactly what they were doing. And then the Soviet pilots arrived. They came from elite. Units of the Soviet Air Defense Forces, hand-picked aviators with thousands of hours in MiG-21 interceptors, trained specifically for combat against Western aircraft and tactics. Unlike the air defense troops whose presence could be concealed inside missile installations, the pilots would have to fly, communicate by radio, engage in visible combat that could not be hidden. The Soviets attempted to maintain secrecy through elaborate deceptions. Soviet pilots were assigned Egyptian call signs, ordered to communicate in Arabic during operations, flew aircraft with Egyptian markings, operated from Egyptian airfields surrounded by ground crews, kept ignorant of their true identities. But secrets of this magnitude are almost impossible to keep, and within weeks of the first Soviet combat flights, Israeli intelligence confirmed what they suspected. There were Russians in the sky. The confirmation came through multiple channels. Signals intelligence intercepted radio communications that were clearly Russian, fragments slipping through when pilots forgot their training or when combat stress overwhelmed linguistic discipline. Human sources reported European personnel at Egyptian bases who kept to themselves and spoke an unfamiliar language. And certain Egyptian fighter units improved so dramatically that the only explanation was replacement by professionals from elsewhere. The flying was too precise, the tactics too sophisticated, the reactions too quick. These were not the same pilots who had been falling from the sky for months. The implications were staggering. Israel was now fighting the Soviet Union directly, pilot against pilot, missile against aircraft, in the first open combat between Soviet and Western Allied forces since World War II. The rules that had governed the Cold War for 25 years, the careful dances of deterrence and proxy conflict that had prevented direct superpower confrontation had been shattered over the skies of Egypt. And the Israeli government had to decide what to do about it. The intelligence landed on Prime Minister Golda Meir's desk in late March 1970, a classified briefing carrying implications far beyond the immediate military situation in Egypt. Meir was 71 years old, a chain-smoking grandmother who had escaped Kiev, grown up in Milwaukee, and risen through Israeli politics to become the first female head of government in the Middle East. She had survived assassination attempts, political betrayals, and personal tragedies that would have broken lesser leaders, and she possessed what colleagues described as an absolute refusal to be intimidated by anyone or anything. But even Meir understood that Soviet combat forces changed the nature of the conflict in ways demanding careful thought. The easy response would have been avoiding direct engagement at all costs. Israel was 3 million people facing a superpower of 240 million, a country depending on American support that could not afford dragging Washington into war with Moscow. The logical course was accepting the new reality, adjusting operations to avoid Soviet-defended airspace, finding other ways to prosecute the war. There were voices in her cabinet urging exactly this approach, cautious ministers who pointed to the catastrophic risks of superpower escalation and questioned whether any military objective was worth the possibility of nuclear confrontation. But the intelligence presented a picture making caution seemed like a recipe for disaster. The Soviet deployment was not limited intervention designed to protect a few critical installations. It was the beginning of a comprehensive air defense network that would eventually cover all Egyptian airspace, rendering Israeli air superiority meaningless and allowing Egyptian forces to resume offensive operations without fear of attack from above. If Israel accepted this Soviet shield, if pilots learned to avoid areas where they might encounter Russian opposition, the Air Force would become irrelevant, and the war of attrition would continue indefinitely on terms favoring Egypt. There was also a psychological dimension weighing heavily on Meir's thinking, though she rarely spoke of it directly. Israel's military deterrent depended not just on capability, but reputation, the perception among enemies that the Jewish state would fight anyone, anytime, under any circumstances, and would prevail. If Israel backed down from the Soviets, if word spread through the Arab world that Moscow could protect Egypt from Israeli air power, the deterrent would shatter, and every enemy would conclude that superpower backing was all needed to challenge Israeli supremacy. Meir's decision was characteristic of her leadership, cautious in appearance, bold in substance. Israel would not seek confrontation with Soviet forces. Pilots would be ordered to avoid deliberate engagement with aircraft or missiles identified as Soviet-operated. But if Soviet forces initiated combat, if Soviet pilots attacked Israeli aircraft or Soviet missiles targeted Israeli formations, Israeli forces would respond with full capability and without restraint. The Soviets had deployed to impose limits on Israeli operations. Israel would demonstrate that no one imposed limits on the Israeli Air Force. But this posture required certain knowledge of when they faced Soviets versus Egyptians. Shooting down an Egyptian MiG was routine. Shooting down a Soviet MiG was war against a nuclear superpower. Israeli pilots needed to know exactly who they were fighting before pulling the trigger. The intelligence community received a new priority: identify Soviet units, track operations, determine when and where they were flying. And the Air Force received a new mission: prepare for a confrontation that could change the Cold War. The spring and summer of 1970 became a tense chess game in Egyptian skies, a deadly dance of probe and countermove as both sides tested limits without quite crossing into open confrontation. Israeli reconnaissance flights using specially equipped aircraft monitoring radio communications and tracking radar emissions mapped Soviet air defense locations and identified signatures of Soviet-operated systems. The intelligence was sobering. Multiple fighter squadrons with the latest MiG-21 variants and dense SA-3 missile networks covering approaches to Cairo and other strategic targets. Soviet pilots flew increasing patrols over Egyptian airspace, serving both to defend against Israeli intrusions and train for the larger confrontation both sides sensed was coming. Israeli pilots, flying missions along the edge of Soviet-defended airspace, developed grudging respect for their new opponents. Soviet aviators were clearly experienced, flying with precision and discipline Egyptians had never displayed. Their formations were textbook perfect, radio discipline tight, reactions to Israeli feints suggesting comprehensive briefings on Israeli tactics and capabilities. These were not hapless conscripts that Israeli pilots had grown accustomed to swatting from the sky. These were professionals, and engaging them would require the best Israel had to offer. The first direct encounters were tentative, almost ceremonial, as if both sides were acknowledging presence without committing to combat. Israeli phantoms conducting reconnaissance would detect Soviet MiG formations rising to intercept. The two groups would approach, close to visual range, then turn away, neither willing to fire first. Soviet pilots would pursue Israeli aircraft toward the canal, then break off as Israelis crossed into Sinai, respecting an invisible boundary neither had formally established. The encounters were tense, adrenaline-fueled, but bloodless. This mutual restraint could not last forever. The logic of combat made escalation inevitable. Israeli pilots were developing an accurate picture of Soviet operational patterns, discovering something crucial. The Soviet pilots, for all their skill, operated under rigid tactical constraints, limiting flexibility and creativity. The Soviet approach to air combat was doctrinaire, built around predetermined procedures and centralized command, leaving little room for individual initiative. Pilots were trained to follow orders, execute memorized maneuvers, rely on ground controllers tracking battle on radar, and directing movements through constant radio commands. This system ensured coordination and prevented friendly fire incidents, but created a fatal weakness. It made Soviet pilots predictable in ways a skilled opponent could exploit. Israeli pilots, by contrast, were trained in a tradition emphasizing individual judgment, aggressive initiative, willingness to deviate from plans when circumstances demanded. Israeli doctrine held that the pilot in the cockpit, not the controller on the ground, was best positioned for split-second decisions. This decentralized approach produced occasional chaos, but also pilots who could adapt instantly to unexpected situations, sense vulnerability in an opponent, and exploit it without waiting for permission. The Israeli Air Force began planning an operation exploiting this asymmetry, a deliberate trap bringing Soviet pilots into combat under conditions maximizing Israeli advantages and minimizing Soviet strengths. The plan required precise timing, accurate intelligence, and pilots willing to serve as bait in a deadly game where the slightest miscalculation could mean death. The code name was Ryman 20, Hebrew for pomegranate. In Israeli military symbolism, the pomegranate represented something beautiful outside containing many seeds within. The operation would appear to Soviets as routine Israeli incursion, an ordinary target engaged through ordinary procedures. The seeds inside would be 16 of the best fighter pilots in the Israeli Air Force, waiting to spring the deadliest ambush in aerial warfare history. July 30th, 1970, dawned clear and hot over the Sinai, perfect weather for what Israel had planned. The operation had been weeks in preparation, every detail rehearsed until automatic, every contingency anticipated. Israeli pilots selected for the mission had studied Soviet tactics until they could predict how a Soviet formation would react to any stimulus. The bait was 2 Mirage aircraft, older French-built fighters now outclassed by modern Phantoms. They would patrol along the Gulf of Suez, deliberately approaching Soviet-defended airspace to trigger an intercept, behaving as if unaware of Soviet presence, as if they were vulnerable targets waiting to be destroyed. But the Mirages would not be alone. Hidden below, flying at extremely low altitude to avoid Soviet radar, waited 12 Phantom and Mirage aircraft flown by pilots selected for combat records and ability to perform under extreme pressure. The low-altitude force would remain, invisible until climbing to attack altitude, by which time it would be too late for Soviet pilots to escape. The timing was critical. Bait aircraft had to draw Soviet interceptors far enough from bases and supporting missile coverage to prevent disengagement. The hidden strike force had to remain undetected until the last possible moment. At 13:55 hours, the 2 Mirage bait aircraft took off and turned west toward the Gulf. Their pilots, both experienced combat veterans, understood they were offering themselves as targets, that Soviet missiles and cannons would soon track their aircraft with lethal intent. They flew steady and level, making no attempt at evasion, projecting complacency the plan required. The Soviet response came exactly as predicted. Ground radar detected Israeli aircraft and vectored an intercept force. Within minutes, MiG-21 fighters from a Soviet squadron near Cairo were climbing toward approaching Israelis. 24 Soviet aircraft in the formation, a full squadron commitment suggesting commanders had decided to make an example of these intruders. What they did not know was that their intercept force had been detected the moment it took off, tracked by Israeli signals intelligence, monitoring every Soviet radar emission and radio transmission. The hidden strike force received continuous updates on Soviet position, speed, and heading. 12 aircraft began their approach, timing their climb with precision of choreographed performance. The Mirage pilots watched radar warning receivers light up as Soviet tracking radars locked on. They could see the formation approaching, 24 MiG-21 aircraft in tactical spread covering kilometers of sky. In moments, Soviets would be in missile range and engagement would begin. At 14:17 hours, the strike commander gave the order to climb. 12 Israeli fighters suddenly appeared on Soviet radar screens, climbing from the desert floor like ghosts materializing from sand. Soviet ground controllers watched the trap close around their pilots in real time. They had 3 minutes to live. The air battle lasted exactly 180 seconds, and in those 3 minutes, the mythology of Soviet military invincibility died over blue waters of the Gulf of Suez. Israeli pilots attacked from multiple directions simultaneously, forcing Soviets to divide attention, to choose which threat to address while others closed from different angles. The first Soviet aircraft went down within 30 seconds, hit by an air-to-air missile at less than 2 kilometers. The pilot ejected successfully, but his aircraft disintegrated into a fireball scattering wreckage across the Gulf. Before debris finished falling, a second MiG was hit by cannon fire from a Mirage that had maneuvered behind the formation with predatory grace. Soviet pilots fought back with courage, but without coordination, their centralized command system collapsing under the assault's speed and chaos. Ground controllers screamed instructions already outdated, referring to threats that had moved, targets already destroyed. Individual Soviet aviators attempted dogfights, but Israelis refused to cooperate, making slashing attacks, then disengaging before Soviets could bring weapons to bear. A third aircraft fell, then a fourth, then a fifth. Surviving Soviet fighters scattered, abandoning formation in desperate escape attempts. Some dove for the deck, trying to lose pursuers in ground clutter. Others climbed for altitude, seeking Egyptian airspace and SA-3 protection that might deter Israeli pursuit. At 14:20 hours, 3 minutes after engagement began, it was over. 5 Soviet MiG-21 aircraft destroyed, wreckage scattered across the Gulf of Suez. 4 Soviet pilots dead, bodies recovered from the water in following hours. The 5th survived ejection and was rescued by Egyptian vessels, one of the few witnesses who could testify to what actually happened in those fatal 3 minutes. Israeli losses: 0. Not a single Israeli aircraft hit, not a single pilot scratched. The most one-sided air combat victory since the Battle of Britain, achieved in less time than brewing coffee. Reports reached Moscow within hours, transmitted through secure military channels, bypassing normal diplomatic communications. Details were sparse at first, fragmentary accounts of a battle gone catastrophically wrong. Soviet pilots killed against an enemy they had been assured they could handle. A defeat so complete, it defied optimistic assessments Soviet commanders had been sending for months. Premier Brezhnev received the news in his Kremlin office, surrounded by senior military leadership. These men were accustomed to managing crises with cold calculation, but this situation was different, and options were far more limited than anyone wanted to admit. The immediate military response seemed obvious. Reinforce Soviet presence, deploy more advanced aircraft, and experienced pilots demonstrate the Gulf engagement was an anomaly. Soviet doctrine held that defeats should be answered with overwhelming force, that enemies achieving tactical success should be crushed before exploiting victories. But military doctrine alone could not address this situation. The engagement had been witnessed by Egyptian observers, American reconnaissance aircraft, signals intelligence stations recording every transmission. The fact that Soviet pilots had been killed would emerge eventually, and when it did, Moscow would face 2 unacceptable alternatives. They could acknowledge the engagement, admitting Soviet forces had been committed and lost badly. This would shatter the image of Soviet invincibility, encourage challenges from adversaries worldwide, raise questions about Soviet weapons and training that could not be answered without revealing classified information. Or they could deny the engagement occurred, maintaining the fiction that no Soviet forces operated in Egypt. This would preserve the myth but require cooperation from multiple parties and create precedent for deception that could backfire catastrophically if truth emerged. The Soviet leadership chose a third option, revealing their profound uncertainty. They chose silence. No official statement acknowledged the deaths. No diplomatic protest was lodged. No threats against Israel. No warnings about consequences. The Soviet Union, which had built its international reputation on confronting enemies and avenging insults, simply pretended nothing happened. Families of dead pilots were informed privately and sworn to secrecy, told that their sons and husbands had died in training accidents, forbidden from asking questions or seeking answers. Surviving pilots were transferred to distant units and forbidden from discussing their experiences. Records were classified at the highest levels, filed in archives remaining sealed for decades. Soviet military press, which normally trumpeted successes and explained away failures, made no mention of July 30th, 1970. The silence spoke louder than any official statement could have. It told the world the Soviet Union had no answer for what happened over the Gulf of Suez, that Moscow could not explain the defeat without admitting weaknesses the leadership was unwilling to acknowledge. It told Israelis their gamble succeeded, that they had demonstrated capabilities even a superpower would not challenge directly. And it told Americans, watching with intense interest, that Soviet military power had limits propaganda had concealed. Within weeks, the Soviet Union began quiet diplomatic overtures, ending the war of attrition. The ceasefire signed in August 1970 preserved Egyptian honor while accepting Israeli military superiority. A compromise unthinkable before July 30th demonstrated what Israeli pilots could do when pushed to their limits. The engagement was never officially acknowledged by either side during the Cold War. The Soviet Union maintained for decades that no Soviet pilots ever fought in Egypt, and the Israeli government, for its own reasons, cooperated with this fiction, neither confirming nor denying details of an operation remaining classified at highest levels. But the pilots who flew that day knew what happened. Families of dead Soviet aviators knew. And slowly, over decades following the Soviet Union's collapse, truth emerged through memoirs, interviews, and declassified documents, revealing one of the most remarkable air combat victories in military history.
And that was the Mossad. Back in a minute.
Nothing worth doing ever came easy. Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. Never, ever quit. Never quit. Adversity makes you stronger. Don't give in, don't back down, and never stop doing what you know is right. They want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedoms. They're not coming after me, they're coming after you, and I just happen to be standing in their way.
When they couldn't beat him, they tried to bankrupt him.
President Trump is back in a New York City court.
When that didn't work, they tried to put him in federal prison.
Raided by the FBI.
When that didn't work, they even tried to kill him.
He just tried to kill President Trump.
Donald Trump still stands, ready to fight, ready to win, and ready to make America great again.
This is Donald Trump's house, brother.
This election, we all get to choose. I'm going to choose real American leadership and a real American badge. The 45th and soon to be 47th President Donald J. Trump.
Defeat inflation quickly, and we will make America affordable again. I will cut your energy costs in half. It's time for the working man and woman to finally catch a break. We are going to bring back the American dream, bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. When I'm back in the White House, we will restore world peace, and it will be again peace through strength. I will launch the largest deportation program in American history. I will put these vicious and bloodthirsty criminals in jail or kick them the hell out of our country. November 5th, 2024, it will be Liberation Day in America. We all salute the same great American flag. Our best days are yet to come. Together, we will make America great again. America is a land of heroes, a place where greatness is born, where destinies are forged, and where legends come to life. This is the home of Thomas Edison and Teddy Roosevelt, of many great generals, including Washington, Pershing, Patton, and MacArthur. This is the home of Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Amelia Earhart, Harriet Tubman, the Wright brothers, Neil Armstrong, and so many more. This is the country where children learn names like Wyatt Earp, Davy Crockett, and Annie Oakley. This is the place where the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth and where Texas patriots made their last stand at the Alamo.
The American nation was carved out of the vast frontier by the toughest, strongest, fiercest, and most determined men and women ever to walk on the face of the earth. Our ancestors braved the unknown, tamed the wilderness, settled the Wild West, lifted millions from poverty, disease, and hunger, vanquished tyranny and fascism, ushered the world to new heights of science and medicine, laid down the railroads, dug out the canals, raised up the skyscrapers. Our ancestors built the most exceptional republic ever to exist in all of human history, and we are making it greater than ever before. This is our glorious and magnificent inheritance. We are Americans. We are pioneers. We are the pathfinders. We settled the new world. We built the modern world. And we change history forever by embracing the eternal truth that everyone is made equal by the hand of Almighty God. America is the place where anything can happen. America is the place where anyone can rise. And here, on this land, on this soil, on this continent, the most incredible dreams come true. This nation is our canvas, and this country is our masterpiece. We look at tomorrow and see unlimited frontiers just waiting to be explored. Our brightest discoveries are not yet known. Our most thrilling stories are not yet told. Our grandest journeys are not yet made. The American age, the American epic, the American adventure has only just begun. Our spirit is still young. The sun is still rising. God's grace is still shining. And my fellow Americans, the best is yet to come. This is a movement like we've never seen in the history of our country.
Wisconsin is Trump country.
And that's what this fight is all about. We're taking on the failed political establishment and restoring government of, by, and for the people. It's the people. You're the people. You won the election.
We love this country. We love Donald Trump.
Promises made, promises kept.
We support President Trump.
This is epic.
Donald Trump is our president! With every last ounce of heart and hope and sweat and soul, we are going to make our stand. We are going to stand for liberty. We are going to stand for justice. We are going to stand for freedom. And we are going to stand for the sacred rights given to us by the hand of Almighty God. You joined our movement, the greatest movement in the history of our country. You protected your family. You defended your dignity. You recaptured your destiny. And you took back your country with that great election 2.5 years ago. We are one united movement, one united people, and one United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
You have always been loyal to this nation. Now you finally have a president who is loyal to you. Every day between now and November 2020, we are going to keep on working, we are going to keep on fighting, and we are going to keep on winning, winning, winning. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America strong again. We will make
If I give you one message to hold in your hearts today, it's this. Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. Relish the opportunity to be an outsider, because it's the outsiders who change the world and who make a real and lasting difference. The more that a broken system tells you that you're wrong, the more certain you should be that you must keep pushing ahead. You must keep pushing forward. Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. In America, we don't worship government, we worship God. My administration will always support and defend your religious liberty. There is nothing that we cannot do. There is absolutely nothing we cannot match. There is no challenge that you will let us down. You will never let us down. The people of Ohio will never let us down. This towering American spirit has prevailed over every challenge and lifted us to the summit of human endeavor. At no time before have voters faced a clearer choice between two parties, two visions, two philosophies, or two agendas. This election will decide whether we save the American dream or whether we allow a socialist agenda to demolish our cherished destiny. Your vote will decide whether we protect law-abiding Americans or whether we give free rein to violent anarchists, agitators, and criminals who threaten our citizens. And this election will decide whether we will defend the American way of life or whether we will allow a radical movement to completely dismantle and destroy it. Our radical Democrat opponents are driven by hatred, prejudice, and rage. They want to destroy you, and they want to destroy our country as we know it.
4 years ago, we took a wrong turn and lost our purpose. We lost the strength that makes Americans who we are. If we dared to speak the truth, it was called hate speech, and our values were labeled shameful. That's when everything we care about fell apart. We surrendered our borders, our paychecks, and our courage. Our patriotism was called toxic. Men could beat up women and win medals, but there was no prize for the guy who got up every day to do his job. Now we're being asked to settle for the way things are. And we're wondering if America can make a comeback. We can, because we've done it before. When we get knocked down, we don't stay down. We get up again. We fight. We fight. We fight.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message. What will we do with this moment? How will we be remembered? Look at the opportunities before us.
This election really isn't about the left versus the right. It's about we the people choosing our government and the choice between freedom versus tyranny.
Nobody has a chronic disease burden like we have. Why are we allowing this to happen to our children? Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
What is going on here is deeper than politics. It is deeply spiritual. We are being called to rise above the hatred and the fear and the evil.
We need to remember above and beyond that we must love our neighbors, that we must treat other people as we hope to be treated.
You want to be a rebel? You want to be a hippie? You want to stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and try calling yourself a conservative.
America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing.
Don't you want healthy children? Don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
I come to you today as a former Democrat. I will be a first-time Trump voter tonight.
People dreamed this country, and it's the people who are making America great again.
Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you're not neutral and that the government has no rights.